Hi again, this is Jason Pisha, online editor of sj-r.com. We're back with The Dome, our weekly look at the week that was in Illinois politics and government. We're here once again with our political writer, Bernard Schoenburg. Let's get right to it.
You bet.
Big news this week was Roland Burris. He had his issues with a phone call that was released by the federal government, and he was down here in central Illinois once again defending himself. And you were able to score an interview with him on Wednesday night. Tell me a little bit about how that went and how he seems to be handling all the pressure once again.
Well, interestingly, the first time I interviewed Roland Burris was about 30 years ago when he, actually more, I believe it was 78 when he was running his first successful race for Illinois comptroller. So we've known each other a long time. He clearly has come a long way. He won 4 statewide elections, but being appointed to the U.S. Senate after being out of the political scene for a number of years has clearly been a difficult situation for him. He maintains his outer sense of optimism, but the changing stories from what he first told the impeachment committee at the Illinois House when Rod Blagojevich was up for impeachment, that he, Roland Burris, had not talked to any of the Blagojevich people about the seat, or certainly about fundraising for the seat. And then when he later, after he was seated in the United States Senate, following that testimony, issued an affidavit to the committee saying, going over the transcript, I find that you didn't ask me the right questions and I neglected to say things, including that I talked to Rod Blagojevich's brother, Robert Blagojevich, about fundraising and other things 3 times. That was difficult enough for him to explain, and people were calling for his resignation then. Now when the tape and transcript come out, it seemed clear that they were talking about fundraising, and he was talking about how much he wanted the seat. And he did say, well, people would think it was bad if I raised money for you, but I'd like to, but maybe there's a way we can work it out. Then he tells the press, after this comes out just this week, I was only trying to placate the governor's brother. I wasn't really going to raise money. I knew it was wrong. Those words now don't look exactly like those words then. When he came to the State Journal Register and we spoke one-on-one, he really was pretty relaxed about it, defending himself, really made some odd leaps of logic, including the idea that, well, it's different to say, he's basically saying I didn't tell a lie because I say that they didn't talk to me, and he says it's different if Blagojevich's people didn't come to him, but if he went to them, that's not part of the deal. He's differentiating between him, who goes to who, as if that makes a difference. So very tortured logic, really. I don't think the public buys it. And I will say the next morning when he met with some Department of Employment Security staffers in Springfield to find out kind of the situation about what stimulus money could do to help with some of the unemployment benefits or some of the programs that they run, there were a number of reporters around, including one from Washington Post following him around. Because he's a big story nationally. He seemed significantly more nervous with a bunch of reporters there. He read a statement, only took a few questions, and he keeps berating reporters for not reading the transcripts. However, if you read the transcripts of the hearing before the House Impeachment Committee, it's clear he had a clear opportunity, if he wanted to say that he had talked to several people around Blagojevich about wanting that Senate seat, and he didn't disclose it at the time, and people, I think, feel betrayed by that. And he actually said, it's not up to me as someone under oath to volunteer information. Well, arguably, politically, given that he was there because United States senators, including Dick Durbin of Springfield, asked him to go tell the whole story in Springfield before he was actually seated in the Senate and took the seat that was given to him by Rod Blagojevich, who was by that time arrested, he didn't tell the whole story, and he probably should have.
We've seen this before, Burris under duress, so to speak, especially right after he was appointed to the seat, and he seemed to have weathered all of those storms in the past. It seems like it's the same thing happening again. Just from your experiences with him and talking with him, does it seem like, is he getting toward the end of his rope, or can he endure this? Will he make it to the end of his term?
Yeah, if the question is will he resign, he will not resign. That is my belief. Logic doesn't always apply when ambition gets in the way. I'm not saying he's necessarily a bad person for this, but he has run for offices in the past where all political observers would have thought he didn't have a chance, but he did it anyway because a group of people around him would say, run, Roland, run, you've got to do this. When he lost one of his races, I believe it was for governor, he turned around and ran against Mayor Daley in Chicago and didn't do very well. So He is very positive thinking about what he is capable of doing, and I think that unless he is thrown out of office, which it does not appear, the Senate Ethics Committee, which is investigating, which is actually the body that asked for this tape to be released, which is why it was released by the federal judge in Chicago, very rarely acts to oust a senator, and I don't think we're at that level. And Sangamon County State's Attorney John Schmidt still has to interview Roland Burris to see if he committed perjury before the committee in Springfield. That's been an ongoing investigation for a long time, maybe wrapping up sometime soon. There was some indication that maybe soon there will be at least an interview, because Roland Burris said here he's anxious to talk to them, but that time had not yet been set up.
Actually, the other big thing going on at the State House this past week has been the winding down of the legislative session. Lots of issues making their way to the governor's desk and through the houses of the legislature now. One of the big ones, or one of the more high-profile ones, was some campaign finance reform. Looks like for the first time we may have some sort of campaign finance funding limits put on state at the state level. We've had it at the federal level for many years. Right. This is the first time it's got this far. But there's some holes in it, obviously.
Well, you know, because Rod Blagojevich is in legal trouble, because George Ryan, the last governor, is in prison, this was supposed to be the giant year of reform. There was a commission set up by Pat Quinn. There was a legislative body, also committee set up to look into reform. Campaign limits on donations to keep Illinois from continuing to be the Wild West of donations was supposed to be part of that process. And yes, the final bill that appears to be making its way through the legislature has limits in it, but they are much higher than the federal ones. It's like individuals can give $5,000 a year instead of about $2,400 for individuals, what they can give to a federal candidate like for Congress. But the congressional limits are each election, so like a primary election and then a general in an election year. The state limits, as written in this bill, are each year, and political action committees can give $10,000. So you're talking about an incumbent candidate with a 4-year term, for example, can get $5,000 or $10,000 a year, whereas maybe their challengers won't get that much. So reformers saying this looks like reform, but isn't that much reform. Also, money raised by multi-candidate committees, they call them, but that includes like the leadership committees in the House and Senate. They are going to be able to give their members or candidates unlimited amounts of money, even under this bill, as far on the spending side, at least in in-kind contributions, so they can like buy all the television ads for somebody, which is the major expense. So the reformers said, okay, it's a small step forward, but we don't like it, we should change it before we finish. But oddly, Pat Quinn, the governor, who has been kind of a reform banner person for years, came to legislative committees and said, I'm for this. I agree with this compromise. The reformers were somewhat aghast, but Quinn is for it. That, in a sense, gives cover, some folks have said, to legislators for saying, hey, Pat Quinn's for it, he's a reformer, I'm for it. We did reform this year, but the limits are very high. So some think it really means status quo, but they are doing something this year, and the editorial pages of papers across the state who have been screaming all spring may not be very happy about it.
All right, Bernie. Well, that's all the time we have now for this episode of The Dome. We hope you join us next week, where we expect to have a discussion about the end of the legislative session and the lawmakers actually leaving town. We'll see how that works out. In the meantime, be sure to stay connected to our website at The Dome, where you can get a full collection of state government and politics stories from around the state, from a whole host of newspapers. And you can also find Bernie's interview on there with Roland Burris from earlier in the week. The address, thedome.sj-r.com. Thanks for watching.